Hey, good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here on Wave Now. I'm Myra Ansari. We are going live to a press conference happening involving the case. You may remember it happened on Mother's Day. The victim was TJ Taylor. He was shot and killed in the parking lot at Shively Animal Clinic. The family attorney is speaking. Let's listen.
Bassett and them and myself, we met with at their invitation, we met with the Commonwealth attorney today. It was, her name's Elizabeth Jones Brown, I think is her correct name. And the Shively detective who, I guess, led the investigation was there. And we were advised that they are taking it to the grand jury this morning, probably as we speak. They left the meeting and that's where they were headed. And they identified the shooter. Her name is, I believe it's Daya. I won't say Wilson is the correct last name, and that's who they identified as the person that shot TJ. And we expressed to the Commonwealth attorney, the information I received kind of sounded like they weren't going to present it with a bent towards obtaining an indictment based on the Kentucky's doctrine of self-defense. And I could talk for hours about self-defense, but it's our position, obviously, that that self-defense is not applicable here for a number of different reasons. My admonition or request to the Commonwealth attorney was that they push for an indictment with the grand jurors, which the Commonwealth attorney has the right to do, and assuming an indictment comes back for some crime, let a jury of 12 figure it out over in the Hall of Justice. So that was sort of our request to them. I have a real problem with the application of self-defense here because the young man was not armed with any kind of a deadly weapon. He apparently, I watched some of the videos. Apparently, he had an orange traffic cone that he was swinging, and these ladies apparently came into the clinic to agitate. The lady that shot TJ pulled the weapon inside the clinic, pulled a firearm inside the clinic. It continued outside where she shot him under the guise of defending her. I guess it's her spouse or partner that was there with her, another female. And it's just my view that self-defense to a degree has become problematic in our society. I think we all agreed on that this morning. And I think this is a place where self-defense was not appropriate and was not proper. And this family wants justice. And the way that happens is that the Commonwealth attorney approaches this with the intent of obtaining an indictment and does so. And it's sorted out in front of a jury of 12. And if a jury of 12 believes that self-defense was appropriate and issues an acquittal, that's how it works. And we'll accept that. What I think my clients have a difficult time accepting is that this thing's been sort of held in secrecy for whatever reason. It's very unusual that someone is killed and the person who killed that person is not identified in the media. That was a little bit unusual. It gave this family concern for obvious reasons. It gave me concern. But I think they see here a not very hard push for justice they'll never get justice for their son. He's gone, but justice for his family. And they're just very concerned about that. And I am as well. And I hope the Commonwealth attorney does the job the way we want the Commonwealth attorney to do the job. They're not bound to do anything we ask them to do, but certainly this family is a crime victim and they'd like to see justice.
David, I know you said you're speaking for his parents. How are you guys feeling after that conversation about taking the case to the grand jury?
Well, my perception from them, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they don't feel real well. They don't feel real good about it because I don't think they felt that the Commonwealth attorney was all in on pushing this as they think the Commonwealth attorney should be. So I think there's some fear here. There's some concerns about the way this investigation was conducted. There's a couple of people that, according to the investigator and according to the Commonwealth attorney, they made some efforts to talk to, but there's still some witnesses out there that were at the clinic when it happened, who they did not talk to. There's a bank camera across the street, which I guess they were unable to obtain, or that we were told didn't have the right angle. Then there's another home that's across the street from the clinic, and they said they never could get in touch with anybody at that home. However, I pointed out that the grand jury does have subpoena powers, and they could issue a subpoena to get that camera footage. It maybe doesn't show anything, but we'll never know unless we get it.
Does it concern you, since they said, they aren't pushing for indictment, that the way it will be presented, that it would sway the grand jury to not choose that option? Are you afraid of how they'll present?
Yes, and I didn't say that they don't let me make sure y'all understand. They didn't say we're not pushing this hard. What appeared to me to be their position and their stance on this was that they weren't going to push this very hard, to the extent that they might even tell, the Commonwealth attorney can say whatever it wants to the grand jury. It's a secret proceeding until later, of course. But I had the feeling that they were intending on, in a roundabout sort of way, saying, we kind of believe this lady's claim of self-defense. And I don't think that's the Commonwealth attorney's place. If you believe there's enough evidence, and the standard of the grand jury is very small. At trial, they would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt this person committed the crime charged with. At the grand jury, there's an old saying, you can indict a ham sandwich if a prosecutor wants to. There's some truth to that. And it all depends on how the prosecutor turns it, spins it, presents it, et cetera. And I think if they present it the right way, if you're going to the grand jury, it would seem to me your goal is to obtain an indictment because you believe that there's at least some possibility that there could be a conviction based on, whatever evidence is there. Why would you go to the grand jury with the intent not to indict? And we've seen that happen before in our community, unfortunately, a number of times over the last few years. I'm not blaming the current Commonwealth attorney or the people that are there, but we all know what happened here in the last few years, and that there were some things that probably don't really look good with not the current prosecutor, but with prosecutors and people that press these cases. So yeah, there's a lot of concern there.
Do you think, because this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this happened like maybe a week after the death of Tom Wine, and they had to kind of go through the process of getting a new Commonwealth attorney. Do you think that played a factor in this taking so long?
Who knows? The death of Tom Wine, certainly tragic. The office marched on. They had an acting Commonwealth attorney. I don't know. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't be real happy about the way this investigation went, and particularly the secrecy of, I've called and tried to get information, and we're just not releasing that. I've never seen in this community, and I've lived here a long time and practiced law here a long time. I've never seen where someone's not identified like that. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, and I know they had concerns about there's some things on social media about people being blamed that maybe had nothing to do with it. I don't know anything about that other than I know about it. But, I contacted Shively and the Commonwealth attorney and said, why can't you all identify this person? Well, we just don't do that. Well, if they don't, that's the first time I've ever seen it. And that causes concern when things are, I know a grand jury meets in secret, but the investigation itself, just to get zero information is just kind of strange. Which when things out of the ordinary happen, it causes people to draw other conclusions that maybe aren't correct. But that's the nature of the human condition.
There's no arrest report that identifies everything?
Not that I know of. And typically a felony would you'd be charged, and then you'd go to district court for a preliminary hearing, probable cause hearing. And then if a district court finds probable cause that a felony is committed, then it goes to the grand jury, is presented to the grand jury. So there's a trail through district court. There's an arrest citation or sometimes just a summons, and there's a record of, what takes place. And then there's an actual hearing in the district court to make the determination as to whether there was probable cause. They just presented this to the grand jury, and that's not typical in our system.
It took us 5 weeks to get here, so how long is it going to take for everything else to start?
Well, we should know something today. They're presenting it today, and I asked the Commonwealth attorney to call me, afterwards with the result. And if there's no true bill, which means they didn't indict, then technically the case is closed unless new information comes out or something else arises. There will certainly be a civil suit subsequent to this, regardless of whether there's an indictment or not. There will definitely be a civil suit.
Against the individual or the hospital, the animal?
At least, let me say this at this point, at least the individual for sure. Ms. Wilson, yes.
Do we know what charges the grand jury is bringing?
I think she said she was going to present manslaughter. There's 4 degrees of homicide in Kentucky. It's not murder. It's probably not man 1. It's probably man 2 or reckless homicide. And I think that's what she said. I also pointed out the lady actually pulled a weapon, a firearm in the clinic and waved it around. I don't know that she pointed it at anybody, but I think that's probably a wanton endangerment or at least a menacing. I mean, we saw during protesting, anytime a protester pulled a gun out, they were charged with something. So, I'm not understanding why this person's not been charged with something or won't be, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I guess from my last question, I know for the family, the parents, the wait right now must be agonizing because literally how this moves forward is upon 12 people in the grand jury, correct?
Right. Well, really, right now it's in the hands of the Commonwealth Attorney who presents it how they want to present it. And we saw with Cameron that if you don't really want somebody indicted, you can keep that from happening as a Commonwealth Attorney. If you really want someone indicted, the standard is so small, it's not that difficult. Let's do that. Let's let a jury of this lady's peers figure it out.
Well, I was just going to ask, I don't know if they want to say anything, kind of just the wait, because right now it's just waiting.
And let me tell you, I have several children. I cannot even imagine how this makes them feel and how agonizing. I'm not even sure that does justice to it. And they want, speaking of justice, that's what they want. And their fear right now is that at least through the Commonwealth Attorney's efforts, they're not going to get it. Through the Commonwealth Attorney and the Shively Police Department, they're not going to get it. And they would much prefer that, a jury of this lady's peers figure it out as opposed to, a grand jury based on a presentation by the Commonwealth Attorney that stymies it. And that's their fear. They'll never get justice for TJ, as I said, but they want justice for themselves and for their family, for closure, so that they can move on, because the thought that, someone that killed their son is out there unscathed is just not satisfying, to say the least.
The fact that veterinarians across the country encounter episodes of violence in their offices on a regular basis due to the extraordinary cost of vet care, the lack of staffing, the impact COVID had on the veterinary profession. This seems to be what would be a landmark case in that particular industry, whether this person is held responsible for coming into a vet clinic with a weapon and being prepared for whatever eventuality occurred. So how do you comment on that, David?
Well, I am not, how do I say that? I am not an advocate of self-defense. I think self-defense is appropriate, very appropriate in certain circumstances. I happen to think in the vacuum of this event, this circumstance, that it was not an appropriate action. Now, ultimately, who decides that? A jury of 12, not me. But my view of it going in is that, and I've never been a prosecutor, but if I was, my opinion of this is based on these facts in this particular case where I've got a dead, unarmed kid. Well, he was armed with a plastic traffic cone, if you want to call that armed. And there was some physical confrontations between all these people within the clinic. But you got a lady that brandished a weapon. Obviously, you don't pull a weapon out unless you intend to use it. And she did use it. And I think in the context of this case, self-defense is at least not appropriate to prevent an indictment from taking place and the wheels of justice from turning appropriately. And we'll let a jury of 12 decide if this lady's actions were justified. Clearly, though, that we've got a problem in our country with use of force and, self-defense, and clinics are, I have a close friend who's a veterinarian, and this is not uncommon in veterinary clinics that these folks feel put upon, threatened. And obviously their fears became realized to the fullest extent in this situation. And, I think I speak, she's an employee of the clinic. Their son was, their other son is, they're devastated by this entire episode. It's, to say that it's ruined their life. I know that sounds drama, but I think it's true. I mean, I like I said, I have kids, and I can't even imagine if one of my children was taken from me over something as stupid as somebody bringing a dog into a veterinary clinic.
It sounds like the self-defense law is on trial right now.
Yeah. And keep in mind too, this is kind of there's self-defense, and then there's use of deadly force in self-defense. And generally, typically, if I'm smacking somebody or hitting somebody, they can't shoot me. Now there could be instances with the use of self-defense where, somebody has me down on the ground and they're stomping me to death, and they have a gun and drop it, and I can grab the gun and shoot them and keep them from killing me. That may be an appropriate use of deadly force versus non-lethal force, but non-lethal force can get into deadly depending upon how many times you hit somebody, where they are, etc. But yeah, to a degree, in Kentucky, we have a phenomenal self-defense law. If you're on the side of self-defense, there's a famous quote from a 1932 or 3 Kentucky case that says, "Kentuckians don't run, we don't have to." Now, at some point, you do have to. Kentuckians don't have to retreat, but if somebody comes at you and you knock them out, hit them and knock them out, and they're laying on the ground, you can't stomp them to death. That's not self-defense. The right to self-defense ends when the threat is repelled. So, we've seen in some police shooting cases where somebody's running away and they're shot in the back. That's not self-defense. That's murder. So, but this one, and like I said, I only had one opportunity to review the videos today, and I did. And even upon review of those videos, I just don't see a situation. This situation is where self-defense is appropriate. But again, hopefully the Commonwealth Attorney presents it such that an indictment is returned and a jury of this lady's peers can figure it out. That's how the system works.
So how soon for the civil suit? You mentioned that earlier.
Probably the next few weeks. Yep. Everybody good? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent and Jenny.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much for staying with me here on this stream. We are bringing you an update from the family attorney, TJ Taylor, on Mother's Day. He was shot and killed in the parking lot of the Shively Animal Clinic. Some of you have asked, what is this case about? I've posted a link to a previous story that we have done so you can get some background information. But Wave News reporter Marissa Burke is working on this story, and she's going to have more for us coming up on Wave News at 5 and 6. Have a good day.